Abuse does not survive on violence alone, it survives on perception. Long before bruises are seen, if they are ever seen at all, there is a story being told, a carefully curated version of events, a narrative designed not to explain harm, but to erase it. This is how abuse hides in plain sight. Most abusers understand something very important. If they can control how others see the situation, they can control the victim without ever raising their voice in public. So they perform. They become charming, helpful, reasonable, concerned. They learn exactly how they need to show up to be believed. To friends, coworkers, family members, neighbors, even professionals, the abuser presents themselves as patient and misunderstood. They sigh when the victim isn't around. They shake their head sadly. Say things like, I don't know what else to do. There's just really emotional. They had a rough past. They get triggered so easily. I try so hard. And just like that, the groundwork is laid. Because when the victim finally speaks up, when they try to explain the fear, the control, and the harm, the audience has already been primed to doubt them. The abuser's most powerful weapon is not anger, it is plausibility. Abusers rarely describe their behavior directly. They describe the victim's reactions. They don't say, I monitor their movements. They say, they are secretive. They don't say, I punish them emotionally. They say, they are impossible to please. They don't say, I isolate them from support. They say, their friends are a bad influence. This reframing is deliberate. It turns harm into concern, control into care, abuse into misunderstanding. Over time, the victim becomes labeled difficult, unstable, overreactive, sensitive, crazy. And once that label sticks, everything the victim says is filtered through it. If they cry, it proves the point. If they get angry, it confirms the story. If they stay calm, they're accused of manipulation. There is no winning because the narrative was never meant to be fair. Abusers often weaponize credibility. They choose when to appear calm. They choose when to escalate privately and de escalate publicly. They may even provoke reactions intentionally, knowing that if the victim finally breaks, that moment will be used as evidence against them. This tactic has a name: reactive abuse. The victim is pushed, belittled, threatened, cornered until they respond emotionally, and that response becomes the headline, not the hours, weeks, or years that led up to it. The abuser then performs concern. I'm worried about them. They scare me sometimes. I just want them to get help. And the world nods along. Because it is easier to believe one calm person than one distressed one. Another common tactic is selective truth. Abusers often tell stories that are technically accurate but deeply misleading. They might say, I never hit them. I never told them that they couldn't leave. I never forced them. What they leave out is the fear, the consequences, the punishments, the threats that didn't need to be spoken twice. They rely on the assumption that abuse must be obvious to be real. They also exploit social discomfort. People do not like conflict. They do not like messy truths. They do not like choosing sides. So when an abuser frames a situation as mutual, toxic, or just a bad relationship, it gives outsiders an easy exit. No villain, no responsibility, no need to intervene. Meanwhile, the victim is shrinking. They stop correcting the story because every attempt backfires. They stop explaining because no one is listening. They stop trusting themselves because the world keeps siding with the person causing the harm. This is not accidental. Isolation is a core strategy of abuse. If an abuser can convince others that the victim is unreliable, they don't need to control the victim as tightly. The system will do it for them. The most dangerous part of this dynamic is how normal it looks. From the outside, it sounds like relationship drama. From the inside, it feels like psychological captivity. So, how can someone on the outside recognize what is actually happening? Here are 5 signs that what you're witnessing may be an abuser controlling the narrative, not a difficult victim. 1. The abuser speaks for the victim. They explain their emotions, intentions, or reactions instead of letting the victim speak for themselves. 2. The victim is consistently framed as too emotional, while the abuser is praised for being calm, even when the situation is serious. 3. The abuser shares personal details about the victim's struggles publicly under the guise of concern while minimizing their own behavior. 4. The story never includes accountability. Everything is someone else's fault: stress, trauma, misunderstandings, but never choices. 5. The victim's behavior is scrutinized more than the abuser's actions. Reactions are judged, patterns are ignored. Recognizing these signs matters, but recognition alone is not enough. People often want to help, but don't know how to challenge abuse safely. Calling out an abuser does not mean confrontation, accusations, or escalation. In fact, direct confrontation can sometimes make things worse for the victim. Safe intervention is about disruption, not exposure. So here are 5 ways someone can call out abusive tactics safely while signaling awareness. 1. Name behaviors, not character. Instead of saying, "You're abusive," say, "I notice you often speak for them when they're here. I'm not comfortable with that." 2. Ask questions that interrupt the narrative. Have you asked them how they feel about that? Can we hear their perspective? 3. Set boundaries in shared spaces. I'm not okay with jokes or comments that put them down. This conversation feels unfair. Let's slow it down. 4. Validate the victim in front of the abuser, calmly and neutrally. "I hear what you're saying. That sounds stressful." Simple acknowledgement can shift power. 5. Follow up privately with the victim. "I noticed some things that concerned me. You're not imagining what I saw." This restores reality without increasing danger. Calling out abuse is not about winning an argument. It is about breaking isolation. Abusers rely on silence, discomfort, and doubt. When even one person refuses to play along, the illusion weakens. And for victims, being seen, even quietly, can be life saving. If you are watching a situation and something feels off, trust that instinct. Abuse often announces itself not through chaos, but through control. And if you choose to speak up, remember this: you don't have to expose everything, you don't have to be dramatic, and you don't have to be perfect. You just have to refuse the lie. Because once the story changes, once the mask slips, abuse loses one of its strongest protections. And sometimes that is where safety begins.